Welcome back to Pack Mentality, and we have another episode of one podcast a week on program design for the next year. We are in March. Nice. We've made it through a quarter already. So first off, we're going to be talking today about EMOM, AMRAPs, and for time workouts and how to program each for maximum results. So these are very misused training styles that I see get wrong a lot from either other training programs that I've done or seen, or when people program for themselves. So let's get right into it. So we're going to talk about, first off, how most people use these formats. So first off, with an EMOM, it's every minute on the minute. That's what it means. And this can really turn to sloppy AMRAPs because people often overestimate what they can do within the minute. And when they first start, that first minute or so, or whatever that first sequence is, whether it's a 30-minute EMOM, 20-minute EMOM, 10-minute EMOM, 40-minute EMOM, is that usually the first few minutes actually aren't that bad because you're fresh. And then as you get deeper into the workout, fatigue starts setting in, then your reps start getting sloppy, and then you only have like 5 or 10 seconds to transition to the next exercise, and then it just turns into an all-out just AMRAP, which defeats the purpose of an EMOM, because an EMOM is all about quality. And then AMRAPs often become pacing challenges instead of pushing limits. So a lot of people will overpace AMRAPs because they know that they have a certain, so it's a time-based priority workout. So you look at the workout and you're like, okay, it's 20 minutes. I need to go out kind of slow. Or sometimes people, it's the opposite. They go out too hot, one or the other, it's usually. And pacing challenges are usually the biggest issue with AMRAPs. And then you need to actually be coached on how to properly do this with the appropriate stimulus from a coach. And then for time workouts, can lead to form breakdowns with no real intent. They're just kind of thrown together, and you're just going as out hot and staying hot, and that can cause injuries or just not doing the right movements the right way. And so this was probably one of my biggest mistakes when I first started learning how to do program design. I struggle with trying to do these 3 different styles appropriately. My EMOMs were typically just kind of out of nowhere, to the point where either they were too hard or too easy. And then my AMRAP, same thing. I add pacing challenges with my AMRAP, so I'm really talking to myself on that one in my last story. And then for time workouts, it's like you just go out hot, and then either I'll burn out or my form will just break down just because I'm racing and trying to get the workout over with as fast as I can. So yeah. So I'm talking to myself pretty much. And so when compared, well, what happens is when you do this incorrectly is that if you don't have a real plan and there's no real progression, that you're going to end up getting burned out real quickly, or you'll get injured. And burnout is going to happen before you get injured typically. And then you're just going to hit a plateau, and you're not going to be making progress because the stimuluses aren't appropriate. And when you compare and you use each method correctly, here's a breakdown of what that actually looks like. So EMOM is better for skills and strength, okay? So what we're looking for here is doing high quality reps. This is why I like EMOMs, because I know the reps are going to be very manageable, but I can also move very quickly and then have plenty of rest, but my movement quality is still going to be high because there's going to be a forced rest, or there should be a forced rest in an EMOM. And same thing with strength. Strength keeps me on task. Now, is it the best for actually building absolute strength or absolute power? Absolutely not. You're better to do that in a fully rested setting. However, you could still build strength very effectively using EMOM, simply because it'll save time. It'll help you build volume very quickly in a short amount of time. And then also, it's more metabolic, meaning that there is less rest. And so you'll use food as a fuel source, and it's better for fat loss, but not necessarily strength, but it is great for muscle endurance and strength endurance as well. Now, AMRAPs are better, in my opinion, for pacing and endurance. Now, there are short AMRAPs, and that is kind of more of a for-time workout. So I'm talking about longer AMRAPs. So I'm talking about like 15 plus minutes, all the way up to 90 minutes for a long CrossFit workout. And this is more for pacing and endurance, because you know that you're going to be working for the set duration of time, which makes it actually a very effective training method. Because if I know that I struggle with like a 15-minute or 20-minute time domain, I can either double that in order to better pace it, or I can make that shorter so that way I go a little bit faster. And I can also practice within that time range that I struggle with and know exactly what my capacity is because I have data to back it up because I have rounds plus reps. And then I'm like, okay, so now I know I can do this XYZ exercises and these rep schemes and this amount of volume in 20 minutes. It's a very easy measuring tool to see if I've improved, or an easy way for me to work in a specific time domain to improve that area. And then for time workouts are best for intensity and sprint efforts, okay? So for time workouts, there are plenty for time workouts that are long, but at the same time, for time workout is, in my opinion, is best utilized for very short bursts of intensity and all-out efforts. So the result is that more progress when you use these appropriately is that you're going to have more progress, better recovery, and then you're actually going to improve with your strength and conditioning. And we're going to kind of dig deeper into what are actually meant for, how to actually appropriately program design EMOMs, AMRAPs, and for time workouts to fit different goals, because not everyone has the same goal. So how can we utilize this for someone who just wants weight loss, or who just wants strength, or who just wants to, for specifically CrossFit performance? And also when to use each for each format. So either strength conditioning or skill work. And there's some common mistakes that we're going to talk about that we're going to avoid. And then, especially because everything turns into a race. So we're going to address that. And then how to structure these workouts for progress, not just fatigue. Okay. I know CrossFit is known as a fatigue-based training style. However, there are better ways to train. And then there's also better ways to test that training. Okay. If it's your first time joining us, I'm Matt Banwart. I own Red Wolf CrossFit in Huntington Beach, California with my wife, Caitlin. And we started this podcast with one goal in mind, and that was to make fitness education accessible, engaging, and effective for everyone. So let's dig a little bit deeper, going back to just the EMOM, every minute on the minute. So we're looking at consistency and skill development here. So I like to use EMOMs for strength work, especially if there's a time constraint, either in the class or in my own training. And it's also great for skill refinement because you can choose the amount of reps you do. So I mean, obviously, the lower amount of reps you do on the minute, the more efficient and more effective and better form they'll be. And as you start raising the reps, obviously, then you're gonna have under fatigue and you're gonna do more volume. So you can do one or the other. So either under fatigue or refining a skill. And then there's also structured pacing because you're doing one movement typically on the minute. And so that helps you focus on specifically just that task at hand with those reps at hand. And really you should be doing these reps unbroken. So it's training you to do a set unbroken and focusing on quality over, getting to the next thing as fast as possible. And what this does is that it prevents over fatigue while maintaining high quality movement. And when you're in a training setting, that's more important because that will eventually transfer over, because how you do anything is how you do everything. And what this does from a physiological standpoint is that it's going to help build muscle endurance and movement efficiency, especially over time. Because as you start getting deeper into the workout, you are going to fatigue. And if you fight for those unbroken reps under fatigue, you'll be able to know what that feels like in a for time or in an AMRAP setting. So I think EMOMs are one of the most effective training tools for all of CrossFit training in general. Let's move on to AMRAP. So this is what I like to use for pacing and work capacity. So this is designed to build stamina, endurance, and muscular fatigue resistance, or just muscle endurance in general. And I really like to utilize AMRAPs because it teaches you how to pace themselves instead of going all out too early. Because if you know, a lot of times when you approach a time workout, you actually don't really know how long it's going to take, especially if you've never done it before. So in an AMRAP setting, though, it's like if you know you're going to be training or doing a workout for 10, 15, 20, whatever minutes, you know that you can't go out super hot right away. Okay. And there's really no pacing it, because even in a time workout, you can kind of go hard on the things that you're good at and then kind of back off on the things that you're bad at, depending on what the workout is. And what this does is that it can be used for both strength, endurance, and conditioning. So it's not really the best for a skill development or anything. However, this is really good to utilize with almost any kind of rep scheme. And it's really good for conditioning because like an AMRAP should be very cyclical. Like it should be high turnover movements. There shouldn't be a ton of heavy loading in this, depending on what stimulus you're going for. There are better methods to be training like strength in that conditioning. So AMRAPs are excellent because they you have a little more control, and it's really easy for data collection as well, because it's really easy to measure your progress with. And then we have for time workouts. So we're looking here at speed, efficiency, and this is a competitive effort. Okay, this is why you see most CrossFit games or CrossFit events are for time. Not only because they're more exciting to watch, but it's a really for time workouts are a great way to test it because there is no set time limit. It's like you just get the work done as fast as possible. So this is what we call a task-based priority training. And this is best for testing speed, work capacity, and transition efficiency. Okay, now transitions matter in AMRAPs as well. However, transitions matter a lot more in for time workouts because it is for speed, and every second you waste setting up or transition to the next exercise or movement, the more time's going to be eaten up. Okay, um, this is really used for benchmark workouts and to also track progress over time. So very similar to the AMRAP where we're tracking rounds and reps. We're just tracking how fast you can do this for time. And this is really ideal for high intensity sessions when programmed correctly. Now, here's how to actually program EMOMs and AMRAPs and for time workouts for different goals. So EMOM is for controlled strength and skill work. Okay, so this is best for like structured pacing. A common mistake, like I said earlier, is treating it like an AMRAP and rushing through the reps or having too many reps in the minute and then you have no rest. There should always be about anywhere between 15 to 20 seconds rest before you move on to the next thing. I would even argue that it should be shorter depending on what your conditioning is. Now, how to program it. So if you do have a strength focus, you can do like one heavy squat every minute on the minute for 10 minutes, and you get 10 sets of one heavy squats in there. And you can even, just because it's an EMOM doesn't mean you can't have a structured rest in there either. You can also have it every 2 minutes, every 3 minutes. But what it does is it allows you to know how much weight can I push on a structured time constraint. So if let's say I do one squat every minute on the minute for 10 minutes and I feel really good for the first 5 and really bad for the second 5, okay, I kind of know that based on this time that I need to work on the back half and what specifically is under fatigue. So it gives me feedback very quickly within the 10 minutes. And when it comes to skill focus, so if this could be like a 25-foot handstand walk unbroken, this could be any kind of gymnastics movement, but let's say you do just like 5 reps of pull-ups every minute on the minute for 10 minutes, or you can also alternate minutes with another exercise. But again, it gives you feedback on how long can you do this exercise for this rep range unbroken under somewhat fatigue, but not in a true CrossFit setting. So it's really good for gathering ideas on how we can train this better. And then over time, just like with progressive overload with strength, we can start adding reps. We can take reps away. We can make the skill higher. We can increase the distance. It just depends on what we get from feedback from the result. And then conditioning focus. So you can also use this for conditioning. And this is what I love about EMOMs is that they're just so versatile. Is that let's say you did like a 20-minute EMOM of a 10 cal row in the first minute, and the second minute you do 12 kettlebell swings. Okay, so this is really good because it keeps the work that you're doing the quality of it very high. So it'll help you work on your rowing without worrying about the transition. You're not going to have as much localized muscle fatigue either. So this is where your form will get better, and you can also work at a little bit faster pace. And I do find that when you do make people work a little bit faster than a pace, like a paced state, when they have a minute on the clock and they have a minute to row 10 cals, they're going to try and get that over with a little bit faster than if like it's a for time or an AMRAP. So that will also increase their power output per set. And then that will also allow them to have better form because you want to be as efficient as possible. Now let's move into AMRAP, which is more about work capacity and pacing strategy. So this is best for endurance, muscular stamina, and energy system development. Okay, so just fancy term for utilizing either our lactate system, our aerobic system, or our CP system. And the common mistake is that you go out too hot and you crash early. I think we've all done this in every single CrossFit workout. So this is why I do like AMRAPs, because we can be upfront with you and be like, hey, this is going to be 20 minutes. You don't want to go out too hot. We want you to pace it for about the first 10 minutes and then maybe start going a little bit harder, increase it to about 10% on the next 5 minutes, and then go all out in the last 5 minutes. So it allows us to kind of see where you kind of crash and burn to in a certain time domain. So, like, for example, if I have someone who really struggles with 20-minute AMRAPs and I have them do an AMRAP, and then they burn out at 8 minutes, And then let's say we retest that and we train them and then we retest that 12 weeks later and they start burning out 15 minutes. It's like, okay, now I know that we've increased our work capacity in that time domain. And then now I can address that appropriately going forward. And then here's how to program it. So we have short AMRAPs, we have medium AMRAPs, we have long AMRAPs. So short AMRAPs are anywhere between 5 to 7 minutes, and this is more of a sprint style effort. So think like, kind of like a classic open workout or just a short workout. So this is more kind of like almost like a for time workout because you're under such a time constraint. And typically these are with lower reps or with heavier weight. Okay. And you have a medium one, which is anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes. This is for more sustained effort, and this is best for using cyclical movements. So movements meaning with that have high fast turnover, lower skill, and just great for overall work capacity. So we're talking like kettlebell swings, box jumps, and wall balls. Great for training for that, especially the aerobic system and the lactate system. And then long, we have 20 minutes plus, and we're looking at more of a grinding pace. So again, this is best for like, running, rowing, body weight movements. This is really good because the only reason I don't like using heavier weights or anything like that along or super high skills for long workouts is that it just becomes a muscle fatigue fest or just like a Stonewall fest of where like you just get stuck at a certain spot and you're just kind of standing there, which kind of defeats the purpose of training for that duration. Now, there's a time and a place for it every once in a while, but that's better kind of for testing than it is for actually training. And the reason we want to use these different styles of AMRAPs is because it builds aerobic and muscular endurance and also allows us to see our pacing. So that's a better way to use it rather than kind of throwing in like, a heavy lift in there somehow. And then now we have finally for time workouts, which is for speed, efficiency, and intensity. So these are best for benchmark workouts, sprint conditioning, and competition prep. Okay. So the common mistake in this is that a lot of times people will prioritize speed over form, and then this leads to poor movement mechanics, which is not necessarily the best thing for your overall health. And so here's how to program it is that what we do is we under 5 minutes is just an all-out sprint. So all-out intensity, you have to think like, maybe a couplet, so 2 exercises or 1 exercise, just all out, and it's under 5 minutes. So like you have to think like Fran, like 21, 15, 9 thrusters and pull-ups, which is a sprint for time workout, or Grace, which is like 30 clean and jerks for time. Then we have that mid-range style, which is 5 to 15 minutes, and then this is a work rest approach. So you have to think like, Helen, which is 3 rounds per time, 400-meter run, 21 kettlebell swings, 12 pull-ups, or Jackie, which is for time, which is a 1K row, 50 thrusters with an empty barbell, and then 30 pull-ups. So there is some sort of a work rest approach here because it is longer. So there is going to be some transition time, and you're going to use almost one exercise for rest. You can't go too hot on one thing. So for example, on Helen with that first 400-meter run, you can't just go on a dead sprint right out of the gate. Same thing with Jackie. You can't hit that 1K row at an all-out sprint because you'll have nothing left for the thrusters and the pull-ups. And then we have a longer duration, so we're talking 15 minutes plus. So this is more strategy based. So you have to think like something like Murph. Okay, so a really long workout where it's going to take a lot of more pacing, and there's going to be a lot of muscle fatigue involved. So you have to really manage your fatigue and break early, and make sure that you don't hit that wall too early, because if you do, then you're just kind of stuck there resting. And then once you lose it, it takes a while to get it back. And so what we do in terms of how we utilize this is that what this does is it sharpens mental toughness and transition efficiency. So especially mental toughness when it comes down to a sprint, because transitions have to be fast. You're going to be in the most amount of pain in terms of how much lactate threshold you're going through. And then also transition efficiency, because when you're doing it for time workout, every time you spend either resting or taking your time between exercises or chalking, that is time that is clicking against you. Whereas an AMRAP, you're just kind of losing reps. Now here's how and when to use each format for strength, conditioning, and skill work. I'll just kind of go straight through this. And so we have the workout type, which is EMOM, which is best for strength, so heavy lifts and gymnastics. And this is also best for conditioning as well. So this is great for aerobic threshold training. So kind of like doing, like I said, like the 10 cals on the first minute, 12 kettlebell swings on the second minute, and also great for skill development because especially with gymnastics work, because even low skill gymnastics, because it really helps you kind of determine what kind of volume you can accumulate in a certain amount of time, and also lets you know what kind of sets you can do unbroken with a moderate heart rate. So that's why I like EMOMs, because they're really great for building almost anything except for like absolute strength, which I'm not gonna get into, which is like separate, but you can still build really good strength doing EMOMs. Now with AMRAPs, we have strength endurance. So that's good for like kind of moderate weight stuff for a little bit higher reps. And then we're also looking at overall just work capacity and learning how to pace properly. This is how I learned how to pace and also know your engine. So a great way to do AMRAPs, I forgot to share with you earlier when I was going over it, is to actually track your split time. So let's say I do my first round of the workout in 2 minutes of like a 20-minute AMRAP. Now my goal should be to either do the entire rest of my rounds either at 2 minutes or faster. Now, if once I kind of see that I have drop off or I have attrition on where I'm at in terms of my pacing, then I know, okay, well, at what point did I start falling off my pace? And then what can I do to address it? And what specifically was it? Was it muscle fatigue? Was it my nervous system? Was it my breathing? Was it my heart rate? So it just depends on what that is, and then it's really easy to identify, and we can kind of go from there. And this is also less ideal for skill work. Okay, you can still do it, but it's just not ideal for if we're trying to have some skill development here. And then we have time for for time workout. So it's not ideal for strength, okay? Great for testing strength, but not great for building strength. And then we have sprint/benchmark workouts for it's the best for in terms for conditioning. And then for skill work, it's not really the best for skill work because your skills are going to break down under fatigue. So again, it's good for testing, not for developing. If you like this podcast and you want more like this, do me a favor and go and share this with a friend, or give me a follow, leave me a review. It'd be really helpful because every time I see a new review or we gain a follower, it really keeps me motivated to keep making these. So if I do ask you one thing, that would help me out a lot, and I really appreciate it. Now we're gonna move on to how to avoid common mistakes, and it's like kind of turning everything into a race is probably the biggest mistake. So you can't treat every EMOM like an AMRAP, so you have to focus on quality and not speed. And then pacing your AMRAPs correctly is probably the biggest takeaway from this, and it's the best way to actually learn your engine and how to pace. So like I said, use that strategy that I talked about earlier, time how long it takes to do your first round, and then try and hit that within each time. And if you do go out too hot, it lets you know really easily because it just gives you data to work with. And then you have to use for time workouts strategically. So you can't rush technique just to finish faster. So this is really easy to where form breaks down fast because you just want to win the workout rather than doing it right. So you still want to move mechanically sound. And then you also have to keep in mind that you have to prioritize recovery with these because overdoing high intensity workouts like this can also lead to burnout. So that's why having a coach help you or having some sort of one-on-one coaching will help you identify what kind of what is my tolerance for volume, intensity, and frequency on when to do these styles of training. Okay, because like if I just throw a newbie into a 40-minute EMOM, they're gonna not only hate me, but they're gonna hate their life after, and they're not gonna recover very well. And you also want to match the workout to your training goals. So not every workout needs to be a smoke session. Okay, so I did an EMOM the other day. It was 40 minutes. I specifically had it lower reps, something very doable for me, and it ended up being very hard. So again, which is great because it gave me feedback. It's like, okay, maybe if, I don't want to smoke myself here, and I ended up smoking myself. And so, even as someone who's experienced as I am, I still make mistakes, and that gives me good feedback though. It's like, okay, now I know what I'm capable of. Either I'll back off next time or I'll retest something similar and see how much better I feel. And that lets me know if I've gotten fitter or not or what I need to work on. So what success looks like with this is that you use EMOS for skill and strength. You pace AMRAPs correctly, and you attack for time workouts with strategy. And then you also want to track data and make sure that you're actually making making sure that you're making progress. And what if you do all these right, what this solves is that you're not going to be as burned out, okay? Because if this is designed properly throughout the week, that you're just going to feel more fresh throughout the week and you have actually adequate time to recover, okay? And then you're also not going to feel as stuck with your training because, if you're training so hard to the point where you're not recovering, you're not going to get any better. And then also that if you're always gassed and you're always like, everything is like for a race or to win the workout, you're not going to actually see improvement over time because your skills and your strength are going to fall to the wayside. And then what this does especially is that it's going to avoid sloppy movement and injuries from poor pacing. So that's why we like to utilize EMOMs the way that we do. And then there's no strategy at all sometimes, is that we're just guessing every time that we work out. And by utilizing these properly and spreading these throughout the week at the appropriate times, we're able to make sure that we're hitting the stimuluses correctly, but also we're allowing time in between to recover. And that takes a lot of strategy and experience to do. So that's why I highly recommend that you either work one-on-one with a coach, or you ask whoever your coach is, just kind of get them feedback and be like, hey, how should I be approaching this? And also, what can I do to maximize my results? Because it's not about the volume intensity that you put in, it's about your intent behind it. So, thank you so much for listening. If this was helpful, please leave me a 5-star review. I would really appreciate it. I want to continue keep making this for free for you guys, and I appreciate you all. So, good luck, have fun, and nailed it.